This guy could have been the best fighter to ever grace the planet, bro. And I'm not even trying to hype him up. This guy was 450-0, and his name is Rickson Gracie. And in today's video, we're going to talk about his life and what made him different from the rest. His mindset, his philosophy, his training, and just the way he handled difficult things. Rickson Gracie was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1958 and was born into a dynasty, son of Grandmaster Helio Gracie. Now, we could make a whole separate video on Helio and how he's impacted the mixed martial art of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but in very short terms, he's the man. He's the one that adapted Brazilian jiu-jitsu technique to fit for him. Even though he was smaller, more slender, he was able to defeat larger and stronger opponents just by technique alone, using weight distribution and leverage. And he was able to share this with his children. Now, he had a bunch of children. I don't even know how many. There was literally too much to count. I'll put it on the screen right here. And Rickson Gracie was the one. He was the best. Now, if you guys don't believe me, here's Helio talking about it himself.
Portanto, o destaque do Rickson é que ele, no momento da família, é o mais forte, é o mais treinado, é o mais bem preparado, tem uma mente boa, e por isso ele é, como os outros, invencível. Portanto, ele não é que é o bom, a arte é boa.
So he felt like Rickson was the one who represented the art of Brazilian jiu-jitsu the best. At the age of 19, Rickson Gracie was put to the test with his first mixed martial arts fight. Now, this fight was a vale tudo fight, which translates to anything goes into English from Brazilian Portuguese. Rickson Gracie's first fight was against
King Zulu with 120 fights and 4 draws only, 120 victories.
He was a big guy, too.
Yeah, about 210, 220.
And this was Rickson's biggest challenge in his life. And I'm going to go into detail on his first fight just because I feel like there's a lot to learn from. In the first fight with King Zulu, he talked about his biggest enemy. And it wasn't the man staring across from him. It was himself and his own mind. In the first round, there was several exchanges where they went back and forth. Rickson even cracks this dude right in the face, knocking out a tooth.
That I moved back, blocked his shoulders and hit him with the knee right on his face. It was the best knee I could possibly give in somebody. And I expect him to win the fight in that moment. But he just shook, he stood up, lifted his head, shook, spit a tooth, and start back ready again to go, you know. And then I felt like it was really serious, and the thing was much serious than I expect.
And as soon as the round ended, Rickson goes back to his corner. He looks at his dad, and he tells him, hey, I can't go in there. I'm exhausted. I have nothing left in the tank. And his dad's telling him, oh, you're doing good here. All you need to do is this. And he was like, no, Dad, I really can't do this. Like, I'm exhausted. I can't go back in there. And his brother puts a bucket of ice water on top of him and pretty much shocks his system.
And then my brother Holtz threw me a bucket of ice and water in my head. I go, and then bang, the bell rings and I push in again. And like my dad said, I could beat the guy in 3 minutes because he was already tired, wasted too. So when I grabbed his back, he could not escape and I put him to sleep. And then I confirmed my worst enemy was in my mind.
And that's when Rickson realized that he has to be able to trust himself. He has to be able to trust his mind, even in the most chaotic of situations. And that's really what cultivated Rickson's mindset for future bouts and fights. It was something completely different. He wasn't playing a game. He wasn't trying to win by points. He was literally in there fighting for his life. This took things to a different level and eventually led him to gain more confidence when it came to being the ambassador of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If there was anybody who had any problems, anybody who was like, hey, my art is better than yours, they would test it out. And that's really where Rickson was able to cultivate that record of 450-0. So that's a multitude of jiu-jitsu fights in the gi, no gi, vale tudo. And there's some crazy stories about people just showing up to his brother's gym, showing up to his gym, ready to fight. Didn't matter if they were boxers, luta libre, wrestlers, they would dojo storm, and Rickson would just wrap his hands and he'd be ready to go. And, you know, some people speculate that that record is not 100% accurate, saying that he lost in a Sambo fight in this year. But like, bro, his MMA record is 11-0. And if you look at the fights, it really looks like he was ahead of the game in many aspects. When it came to his training, he was very adamant on breathing, taking time to know his body, know his mind, know his limits, focus on the breath, focus on where his mind goes, and being sensitive to different types of energies and being able to adapt to those types of things. Now, I'll have a little bit of clips here and there of him talking about what breathing means to him and how it's affected him.
The big change in my life was when I learned how to breathe. I started to bring in more spiritual possibilities, more mental possibilities. Because what is interesting about the breathing aspect is the brain and the heart are the only organs who can give and receive information. The other organs, liver, kidney, they cannot do that. But when you get upset with something mentally, you bring information to yourself immediately. Your brain is responding. Your heart too, when you get depressed, immediately you feel in your heart. And your heart show you is immediately connection. And what is amazing about that is the lung is the practical aspect within you who are able to control or help your brain and also help your heart. So through the proper breathing, you can control your heartbeats. Another important thing for people to learn about breathing is the idea of inhale. The inhale is not the cause, it's the solution. So if I need a full lung, a full breath, I don't want to just do. If I want a full breath, I first need to now I have a full breath.
These breathing techniques that Rickson talks about weren't developed overnight. They were actually taught by a man named Orlando Cani, who is the creator of the movement meditation Bioginástica. And Bioginástica is a meditation formed to resemble animal-like movements and to develop strength, flexibility, and develop the relationship between the mind and body. And Rickson credits his success to Bioginástica and says that it allowed him to increase his potential by 40%. 40%, bro. We have to think about it, like, especially during that time in the 90s, there wasn't a lot of technology or like an Andrew Huberman talking about the true benefits of, you know, cold water exposure and getting sunlight. But Rickson kind of naturally had to go to these depths and to be able to understand himself, because he had to be ready at all times. Literally anyone could challenge him, challenge Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And he also fought in these 8-man tournaments out in Japan, where he had to fight multiple times in one night. He had to have a strong, resilient mind, and this meditation practice of Bioginástica allowed him to do so. He was first introduced to Orlando, and he used to do these group setting classes of Bioginástica, and Orlando saw the true potential that Rickson had, and, you know, asked Rickson if he could train him individually, and he felt like that would be a better path for him to be able to develop this meditation practice. And Rickson accepted. After a few months, Rickson would go to practice Bioginástica a few times a week, and just like any other day, Rickson would do his movements. He would, you know, walk on his hands, and I'll show a few videos of the meditation practice. And Orlando receives a phone call and tells Rickson, all right, I'm gonna step out for a little bit, I'm gonna get this phone call, just do what you normally do. And once Orlando comes back from the phone call, he sees Rickson in this state of breathing and just doing things naturally with his eyes closed and doing these movement patterns that he was taught. And an hour and a half goes by, and he's trying to get Rickson's attention. He's calling his name. He's just locked in, you know. He can't even get his attention. And Rickson just wakes up hanging off these like wooden rails that they have, and it felt like he was just in a different place. He was no longer conscious. He was just in a completely different zone, in an unconscious state of mind. And that's when Orlando realized that, hey, I have nothing else to teach you. You are your own master of your breathing journey, and you're pretty much a black belt in this form of meditation. And we could see this in the documentary Choke, where Rickson goes out to these cold rivers out there in Japan, and he's going underwater. He sometimes uses a snorkel to go underwater to reach the depths of being uncomfortable, because you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, especially if you're out there fighting for your life. Rickson talks about the natural energies of the trees and the water and how they allow him to truly appreciate life.
I'm a water person. I feel so much energy in the water. I can understand better my emotions. I can understand my self-control. I can really connect myself with a beautiful energy, you know. I feel like after I leave the water, I'm all numb. I don't feel my body, but I feel some kind of very special, nice feeling inside. You know, it's like, it's beyond the pain, beyond the anxiety, beyond the out of control. It's just, you know, it's almost the point where you surrender. It's almost when you're gonna die, you know, but it's a pleasure. It's not the pain and the uncomfortable just disappear, and it's just pleasure. It's unbelievable feeling. It's very nice.
And this is kind of the next topic I wanted to go into, is like, Rickson really is a samurai in every bit of the word.
I've been preparing myself and my personal Bushido, which is the code of the samurai. So when I've been there to bring jiu-jitsu back, I also bring things I didn't know, like celebration of when you win, a celebration, a big celebration. I did not celebrate because I felt like it was nothing to celebrate. I win today, I can lose tomorrow. So it's just one day on the job. It's nothing for say, oh, if I was my last fight, maybe celebration, but not. All the samurais before they put the armor, they use a white cloth to just
underneath.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual thing. So I was using a dark, a white.
Speedo.
Yeah. The fact I was having a little mercy from the guy who was already blind in the eye, and I don't want to punch him. I want to win with techniques. Shows compassion. Shows. So in the Japanese, different than the other countries, they observe the character of the fighter. It's not just the blows and the sensational aspect. So they observe your personality, what you say, how you act after and before the fight. And I was fulfilling their expectations and representing the code of a good samurai. The way I explain, the way my personal conduct. And that's immediately creates some kind of very special relationship between my personality, myself, my jiu-jitsu, and the Japanese audience.
And Rickson right away was a star since making his debut in 1994 after winning that 8-man tournament. Now, Rickson would continue on to fight these super fights for main events out there in Japan for Pride Championship, and increasing in pay each fight. He continued on his career all the way to the year 2000, where things took a tragic turn when Rickson's first son, Rickson Gracie, was found dead in a New York apartment. And I'll have Rickson talk about his loss and how he had to deal with it, and eventually making the career decision to officially retire from the sport.
Was my son, Rockson. He departed from this earth on just after Funaki's fight. So I could not do my next fight because I was focused on putting love and attention to my family after the tragedy. So when I have my loss, I get deeply depressed. I don't want to surf, I don't want to train, I don't want to talk with my friends, I don't want to be happy, I don't want to nothing. I just want to be quiet and cry. And I was very deep on my sorrow. I have to go deeper at the deepest stage of my life, the saddest point, the most vulnerable and weak position I could put myself in. And I felt maybe it's good just to die. I don't know. I was thinking about all the possibilities.
And this happened at the peak of Rickson's career out there in Japan, and he was about to fight in the biggest fight of his life against Sakuraba, the Gracie Hunter. Defeated his brothers, and he was the last man that Sakuraba had to go through. But Rickson made the decision to fully retire from the sport just because his heart was no longer in it. He felt like if his son wasn't by his side and in his corner, he wouldn't be able to go out there. And also, Rockson was the one that Rickson intended to carry on the Gracie legacy by continuing on to follow him on his own journey through martial arts and follow the footsteps of his father and grandfather. Now, Rickson said that it took him years and years to be able to find joy in life again. He was deeply depressed and had to search for himself and rebuild himself once again. He mentions this in his book, Comfort in Darkness, of being able to have faith and being able to have love and compassion, but also having the patience and giving time to yourself whenever things are tough. And it just shows it doesn't matter how strong of a warrior you are. I mean, this guy was 450-0. And dealing with loss and grief is different for everyone. And being able to express that and be completely vulnerable and talking about how it deeply affected him really shows the transparency that Rickson had, and also showed the love that he had for his children. A few years afterwards, Rickson one day climbed up one of his pine trees out there in his home in the Palisades, and he saw a beautiful view of the Pacific Ocean. And he knew right then and there that this was going to be the place where he's going to dedicate a memorial for his son Rockson. And in this documentary, he talks about that process of rebuilding himself, finding a new goal, new purpose, and learning from his son's departure.
I spent about 3 weeks from the first light to dawn working by myself on this. And sometimes I start to bleed in my hands. I have to fix, to put tapes and come back, because I put all my energy on building this. And when I finish, I felt like, wow, I complete something. It was a good victory for me, and I offer this victory to my son. So that's make me reinvent myself and reborn in a way. Something very beautiful, because I give to him a very important present. So I feel very happy after that. And it's all good. This helps me to remember him. And he's always going to be in my heart. It's very good. Thank you to bring me here, because long time I don't come here. It's very nice.
There's so much that we could learn from Rickson and his story. I really hope there's a movie made about him, just because I know that there is not a lot of people who lived a life like his, man. He has lived many lives, and I feel like there's many valuable lessons shared in those stories. Now, stories make the world go round, you know? One last thing before we head out, I want to talk about Rickson Gracie's current opponent, and that is Parkinson's disease. He was recently diagnosed a few years ago, and he talks about his fight with Parkinson's in his new book, Comfort in Darkness. Now, if you guys want to support Rickson and his journey, make sure to purchase one of those books, man. Support the boy. Support the boy. He's an absolute legend, a true warrior. And, I wanted to do my best to share his story. And I feel like it's one of legend, you know what I mean? But he says that he's not going to back down from the fight. He's going to use everything that he's learned from his martial arts career into Parkinson's and learning how to defeat it and not let it control him. And, it really shows that he still has that dog in him, bro. It doesn't really stop. He still has that fight. He's not going to give up. And he also shares other thoughts in his books, talking about technology and artificial intelligence, and how we should be striving for human connection instead of being disconnected by always being on our phones and having AI take over things. I just feel like there's a lot to learn. Rickson Gracie, a G, a samurai, one of a kind, absolutely one of a kind. Hope you guys enjoy. We out. Peace.